Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with lace cookies. That's right, not only is this the easiest fancy cookie recipe I know, it's also the fanciest easy cookie recipe I know. And above and beyond being simple and gorgeous, these Florentine cookies, as some people call them, also keep pretty well, which means they're perfect if you're looking for an idea for an edible holiday gift. Oh yeah, I would like to get some of these, but I'm not going to take any chances, so I think I'll whip up a batch myself. And to get started, the first thing we're going to want to do is finely chop some almonds, which yes, you can do by hand, but it's going to take a while. So if we have a food processor, let's go ahead and use that. And normally with this kind of thing, we pulse on and off until it's just like we want it, but that actually doesn't work so well with whole almonds. Okay, we still want to pulse on and off, but in between the pulses, we want to make sure it runs for a few seconds before we pulse again. Otherwise, we're just sort of knocking the almonds around and they don't really start to chop up. And while we do want these pieces really small, we want to be careful not to go too far. Okay, almond butter is delicious, but it's not going to work very well in this recipe. So what we're shooting for is something that looks like this. And that's it, we can just set those aside until needed. And we can move on to what's going to be the base for the rest of this cookie batter. And like so many great batters, this batter begins with butter, to which we will add some brown sugar, as well as some light corn syrup, or if you want instead, some honey, which is what you're going to see me use here. And no matter which one you go with, the procedure is going to be the same. So it's really a matter of taste. Alright, if you love the taste of honey, go with that. But for something a little more mild and a little more neutral, I'd go with the corn syrup. But either way, we'll go ahead and set our heat to medium, and we'll wait for everything to melt and dissolve. And if we want to give it a stir or two while that's happening, go ahead. But mostly what we're doing here besides stirring is waiting for this to come up to a boil, because that's as far as we need to go. So as soon as our mixture comes to a boil, and hopefully looks a little something like this, we will carefully remove that from the heat and proceed to add the rest of the ingredients, which will include a little bit of real vanilla extract. We will also need a small pinch of salt, and then a surprisingly small amount of all-purpose flour. Oh yeah, this is almost, but not quite gluten-free. And then we'll take our whisk and mix this up until it's nice and smooth. And then once that's been accomplished, we can go ahead and transfer in our finely chopped almonds. And then we'll switch to a spatula and simply mix this until everything's combined. And if you're wondering why we switched to the spatula, you've never tried to do this with a whisk, because basically the entire batter will end up inside the whisk, which is not ideal, and you'd have to use a spatula to clean it off anyway. But anyway, we'll go ahead and mix those almonds in as shown. And believe it or not, that's it. Our lace cookie batter, or lace cookie dough if you prefer, is ready to transfer onto a silpat lined baking sheet. And two very important things to note here. We're only using about 2 teaspoons of this stuff per cookie, which ended up for me being exactly 15 grams, if you want to be all scientific. And the reason for the relatively small amount is because these really spread out when they cook. Like a lot, as you'll see. Which brings me to the second important thing. We need a lot of space in between portions, which is why I only do 8 per pan. And by the way, the rounder and more uniform your portions are here, the rounder and more uniform your cookies are going to be. And what's great about this batter is as soon as it hits the pan and cools down, it really firms up, and the shape is very easy to fine-tune, and if need be, reposition. So I made sure those were all nice and evenly spaced, and I didn't have too many random jagged edges. And that's it, once those have been panned up, they are ready to transfer into the center of a 350-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. And I didn't show it, but about halfway through, if you want to rotate the pan to help them cook more evenly, that's not a bad idea. But anyway, we'll cook those for about 10 minutes, or until they look like this. Okay, we're looking for a gorgeous golden brown that's just a little bit darker around the outside, around the outside, around the outside. And then it's very important we let these cool before we try to do anything with them. Okay, these cookies do not get crispy and crunchy until they're down to room temp. And a great trick for making that happen faster would be to carefully slide the silpat off the pan and off the towel so it's directly on your countertop. And that's going to allow these to cool way faster. In fact, these were only sitting here for a few minutes before I shot this. And as you'll see, they've hardened up beautifully and are very easy at this point to peel off the silpat. And also, I'm going to show you here why they're called lace cookies. Because if they're done properly, the light will actually shine through, and it sort of kind of looks like lace. So that was looking very nice. And then what we'll do once our cookies are cool and crisp is take some melted dark chocolate, and we will spread that over the flat side, right, the side that was down on the pan. And then once we have that spread with chocolate pretty much all the way to the edge, We'll take another cookie and place that flat side down on the chocolate, sandwiching it in between. And by the way, if you let your chocolate cool and get a little thicker, and/or you don't squeeze so hard, you can actually avoid that chocolate squeezing up through the holes up to the surface. But I actually think that looks good. So while I don't want it squeezing out the sides, I do like to give it a little bit of a press. So I get a little bit of chocolate peekaboo action. But anyway, you decide. I mean, you guys are after all the Bobby McGee's of how hard to squeeze. And speaking of freedom just being another word for nothing left to lose, feel free to do these with whatever kind of chocolate you want, and/or any other kind of nut you want. Okay, Michelle is partial to walnuts, or maybe try something like macadamia, which, as you might know, happens to pair perfectly with white chocolate. So this simple technique really is very versatile and adaptable. And of course, you don't have to use any chocolate if you don't want to. And I'm going to enjoy one just like this, so you can hear how crisp and crunchy they are. But anyway, if you did use the chocolate, which I highly recommend, you want to let them sit for at least an hour until that firms up before you serve them, at which point they're ready to stack up and take some pictures of. And while the plain one was very nice, I really do prefer these with that layer of chocolate in between. Plus this way we get to eat 2 cookies at once. So that works out nicely. Not to mention if you use a nice dark bittersweet chocolate, I really think that helps balance what is a pretty sweet cookie. Which reminds me, if you do use the honey, these are going to have a fairly pronounced sort of caramelized burnt honey flavor, which I love, as do many other people. Okay, if you enjoyed our Russian honey cake, then definitely use the honey here. Otherwise, if honey's not really your thing, go with the corn syrup. And as I said, the technique will be exactly the same. And as I mentioned, if you're looking for a gorgeous and easy to make edible gift, a stack of these in a box or tied up with a bow, I think would be very much appreciated by any cookie lover on your list. And yes, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to use cellophane before tying the ribbon on, but that's okay. In the business, we call that artistic license. And if you are going to give these for gifts, make sure you make a double batch, because what will happen is you'll make them, taste one, and then eat the rest. And then long story short, that person ends up with a gift card. And trust me, they really would have preferred these cookies. But anyway, whether you're making these for a gift, or for yourself, or both, I really do hope you give these a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.